And just again, I think we're taught to say these like quote unquote safety cues, but most safety cues don't make a lot of sense and don't actually reinforce or create safety. I think that we don't give the human body enough credit for its ability to like survive and handle things.
Hello and welcome to Think Fit, Be Fit podcast, part of the Think Fit, Be Fit podcast network. My name is Jennifer Schwartz. I'm the founder of Impact Your Fitness and the Think Fit, Be Fit podcast network. I'm also a certified muscle activation techniques RX practitioner, a certified exercise physiologist, and a published course author in lifestyle medicine. This network is actually on the same feed. So this is a collection of shows that aims to elevate the conversation about exercise. This channel of shows is best described as the intersection of exercise mechanics, academic exercise science, human movement science, embracing curiosity, and popular fitness trends. Today's episode with Nikki Naab-Levy is about myth busting on exercise thought problems. So this is all about finding holes in these sayings and cues and sound bites that we have just casually accepted. And we also talk about very specific safety cues that actually don't help. And in fact, they just don't account for the body being pretty resilient. So we want to offer our, firsthand experience in helping people unlearn these safety cues and start to learn how to lean into their exercise, learn about their body, learn about how exercise works for them. And in order to do that, we really have to bring up these myths to the surface. And, Nikki's a great guest to do this with. She's bold, she's confident, and she's also just very open about the experiences that she's had. I highly recommend that you go over to her Instagram at Naab-Levy. So that's Naablevi. That's also her website, naab-levy.com. And she's just a wonderful person to talk to about this stuff. And, taking different positions on our thought process is something I have a lot of respect for. And I just encourage you to open your mind to the possibility that fitness and exercise, it's a science that requires a thought process and a way and a communication thought process. So the way that we communicate what our body needs and what is going to help us is different person to person. So really our goal today is to unravel some of the things that we've been told about different positions and different body and different movements and exercises and body types. We touch on everything from purity culture and Britney Spears to pull your belly button in and brace your core, and why that doesn't make a whole lot of sense and why it might even cause problems with stability in your spine. And so, yeah, it's a pretty fun and packed episode. So please head on over to wherever you get your podcast episodes so that you don't miss an episode. Please subscribe. This is so important because we have different shows that come out on Mondays and Wednesdays, and I don't want you to miss any of them. You can also sign up for the newsletter at thinkfitbefitpodcast.com. I would also encourage you to fill out our survey that is going to help us with our new show, the Peach Pit Fitness Podcast. And that is so that you can submit what you want us to critique, what you would like to experienced trainers and, MAT specialists and people that have, we have such a love for exercise and finding the right exercise for you. What do you want us to critique? We have an aptitude for breaking down exercise. We have an aptitude for bringing perspective to the trends, old and new. Okay, so head on over to the show notes to take that survey. It's only 2 minutes, no strings attached. It would be my pleasure to receive that. And without further ado, here is myself and Nikki Naab-Levy talking about fitness cues and safety cues that really just don't work. Buckle in for this myth-busting episode. They could use in their whole entire approach, like right away, and it would help them a lot get unstuck from kind of what you were saying before. It's like, well, if somebody told you this rule that doesn't exist, then that's why you keep thinking it. And that's why you keep running into this, it's not a brick wall because they keep exercising, but it's like the bouncy wall, like in like
Right.
the bouncy, I don't know what bouncy cage. It's like you put yourself into one of those, so can we pivot to that?
Yeah, totally. Let's start with the pull your shoulders back and down and never let them leave. I mean, and again, it's like, which industry do you want me to throw under the bus for that cue? Because I've heard it in all of them. I heard it in my Les Mills body pump certification. I heard it in my Pilates teacher training. Like I've heard it in a yoga class. And it's like, you have to understand shoulder blade movement. And the thing about it is I understand why people are saying that cue. It's because they don't want you to just elevate your shoulders when you reach your arms over your head. But if you cue shoulders back and down as you reach your arms overhead and say like an overhead press, if you just jam your shoulders into scapular depression, you can Google it if you want to look at a picture, you're actually going to create impingement because you're going to knock your humeral head. That's that upper arm bone into your acromion process, which is this little sticky outy bit kind of off of your shoulder blade / collarbone. I'm very technical of my anatomy here. And it's like, yeah, if you basically just keep knocking two bones together with your rotator cuff in the middle, it's going to feel like crap. And so one of like the things that helped my shoulder, because I did that for years. I'm a good student. I kept pulling my shoulder back and down, was like, oh, it's actually upward rotation. Part of the shoulder kind of goes back and down, and part of the shoulder blade goes out and away. And so again, there's some nuance to be had, but I'd almost rather not cue it at all than cue something that just turns into flat out biomechanical dysfunction. You know what I mean?
Oh God. Yeah. So I have two things to add to that. One is I have an advanced certification and I practice applied functional anatomy every single day with muscle activation techniques, every single day. I am working at like a biomechanical level with people. And by the way, a dude with a whiteboard is not the same as biomechanics. Okay. So it took me 2 years to understand upward and downward rotation of the scapula. I worked a lot more like with soccer players for the first like 5 years of my MAT career. I was working more in like the strength and conditioning world, and I was working with a lot of soccer players. So one, I wasn't paying attention to shoulders. Two, and it didn't quite make sense to me that like hips and shoulders were similar then. Like it just didn't, like I couldn't put my head around that. And there's a reason because they're not. But anyway, so it took me a while to not figure it out, to learn it from someone and then apply it into my sessions. And to understand why, how shoulder movement is related to lower back movement and hip movement, and how the efficiency of the abdominals, like, and the breathing muscles, like how that relates to shoulder health. That took me years. Okay. So again, not the same as dude with the whiteboard. The other thing that came up was when we even think about that cue, take your shoulders back and down, it's inefficient. It's in so many ways because we can't calculate that. Like it's not possible
for us to be standing. And again, like, what's the body orientation of the person we're giving that cue to? Are they looking down like a rowing exercise? Are they going like so hard against gravity? Pulling back and down. What does that mean when you're face down against gravity in a rowing position? Doesn't make any sense. Going toward or pulling them towards the ceiling might make some sense. And it actually doesn't matter almost where they end up. But because if you like basically give them more of a target with the hands, they're not going to kind of come right towards the chest. If you tell them to go, towards the hip, then you have a target. And then the shoulders will do what they're naturally going to do. You can't force it with a cue.
Yeah. I mean, I think what we're getting at here is that human movement is really complicated and everyone interprets cues differently, but it's probably not ideal to cue the opposite motion of what's supposed to happen.
Yes. Oh gosh. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just, I mean, we could have a 3-hour conversation about cueing. And part of it too is with a private client. Sometimes private clients say, I'll try to say all my like biomechanically accurate cues. And then they'll say something that I would never say, like, well, tuck your pelvis. And they do it. They go, oh, you mean tuck my pelvis? And then they actually do the thing that I needed them to do. And I'm like, for you, yes. So I think that's the other thing is like, it also just depends, you know?
Yeah. And yeah, like for me, I'm dyslexic and it plays out in different areas. And it definitely plays out when somebody's cueing me. So Pilates as a student for me was very challenging until, but it was also like until I had the external cues, I couldn't really control anything they were asking me to do. And it would take a lot for someone to pick up on that as a teacher, like, that's so, it's just an example of somebody being like totally smart about the body and like, you can't give me internal cues. Like it doesn't work for me.
I'm the same way. Yeah. Like if you give me an internal cue, I'll just stare at you like a deer in the headlights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway, so that would be number one on the list of things we may have learned a long time ago that don't make any sense. Zero. And it's not even, it's in every certification.
It's a thought virus.
Yeah. Thought virus.
And I think that if we lead that into the pain conversation, so many people who I work with, right? I'm not back to basics, back to pain. When they're like, well, I have pain when I reach my arms overhead. I'm like, cool. Can you show me what you're doing? And then I watch them, and I always watch them for a reason, because so often, because they're someone who's like me, who is a really good student, who studied all the things with a specific type of person, they do this weird thing, for example, with their shoulder and their back, trying to internalize this cue. And then they like reach their arm over their head with the shoulder impingement situation, making this face. And I'm like, cool. So were you thinking about anything when you did that? And they're like, yep, pull my shoulder back and down. And I go, okay, well, what would happen if you didn't do that? What would happen if you just reached your arm? And it's shocking to me. I mean, it's not anymore, but it's pretty phenomenal how many people's pain is quote unquote solved when you give them permission to just let their arm move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's wow. Talk about like creating a problem that doesn't exist.
So often.
Yeah. I mean, but it's like, one of the problems with the fitness industry is that if we create a problem for them and take away their power in a way, decision-making power, we kind of win in a way because they become reliant on us. And that sucks.
It's a great business model to teach people that they're broken and that they can't trust themselves and they have to rely on an external source and a list of weird rules to live their life, because they'll always come back to you because it'll never work.
Yeah. And that's something I've been preaching as like the new paradigm of fitness in general. Like, do not pay attention to people unless they're giving you autonomy, unless they're giving you power to make your own decision. Education first, that whole, being, having discernment around the content that you engage with. I think one of those things is, do they help you think about the problem and solution versus like just giving you that list and supporting, a consumerism model that is just, you know, too many challenges, too many, 30-day promises and things like that. Anywho, sad. So the second one, I think it was the good old fashioned pull the belly button in.
I can't. I mean, again, I can. It's amazing to me how many, and this is very Pilates. I'm going to get canceled by every Pilates teacher in the world right now, and I don't care. But right, and again, but also taught in fitness. Let's be clear.
Oh yeah,
right. This idea of like pull your belly button to your spine to protect your back. It's like particularly when you start strength training and learning how to manage load, you realize what an asinine cue that is. Because if you're always drawing everything in, you can't control intra-abdominal pressure. And again, going back to creating problems that shouldn't exist, if you're always sucking everything in, there's actually like a large number of Pilates teachers who have pelvic floor dysfunction because they've been sucking in for so long. When they try to draw the pelvic floor up, they actually bottom it out. And this just goes back to this weird belief system that I have to think has something to do with the aesthetics of your stomach looks better with air quotes flatter, right? Of like, you're never supposed to let your stomach expand. But your spine isn't more stable. It's like trying to lift a heavy load with a crushed Coke can. So again, it's a breathing cue that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So people imagine climbing up
destabilization.
Yeah. No. So imagine like climbing up a ladder and trying to get somewhere, or trying to step on a crushed Coke can to get up there. Like they're just two totally different structures. It doesn't make any sense. So the spine being the ladder to me. Yeah, no, here's the but there's one place that this cue works, and it's bodybuilding. Because it's part of their pose.
Right.
Is that where it came from? Maybe. It probably came from Pavel.
I don't think so. I don't think in Pilates land this one came out of fitness. I'm going to throw the dancers under the bus on that one. I don't know if it came from the dancer aesthetic. I truly don't know. I don't actually think that Joe Pilates taught it, but I don't really care much about that history. Again, getting canceled left and right here.
Yeah.
But it's just, I think what you brought up with the bodybuilding thing is, again, context matters, nuance matters. So it's like, if there's a reason that you're pulling your belly button to the spine, or if you're doing it for an hour, I don't think that that's necessarily going to create pelvic floor dysfunction. I don't think it's going to make your back hurt. I don't necessarily think it's going to create a problem. But if you internalize that cue to the point that it becomes a bizarre holding pattern, that's all you do walking around all day, and then you wonder why your back hurts, that's an issue. And that's an issue that actually happens. And that type of breathing isn't normal or functional or natural. And I think that if we take that breath and we then apply it to, say, powerlifting, it would be a disaster. And so I think that's where we have to stay open and curious and go, I was taught this cue. It may or may not be problematic, but it's definitely not going to, quote unquote, protect my spine, because injury prevention and injuries are way more complicated than that.
Yeah, there's when it comes to like the pulling into the spine and trying to protect the back, it doesn't work at all, and it can cause problems for like the breathing patterns, which then places more stress onto the the soft tissues of the back and the SI, and creates inefficiency in the abdominals. And as someone who treats, in this like biomechanical neuromuscular way, we start with the control of their pelvis and the abdominal efficiency. And I've seen it all. Yeah. No. So, I mean, I could draw out multiple like scenarios where like it is not helpful. And sometimes just, making the problems, stay, like it's just not helping.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the value of saying less
Oh
and
yeah.
being more open to reading the room. And just again, I think we're taught to say these like quote unquote safety cues, but most safety cues don't make a lot of sense and don't actually reinforce or create safety. I think that we don't give the human body enough credit for its ability to like survive and handle things.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of there's a lot of reasons why we think this way, but I don't think anyone ever fixed their shoulder by pulling it back and down. I mean, I'm sure there's one person. And I think for the most part, spinal injuries are probably not going to be prevented based off of how you sucked in your core.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I know I've had to help several of my clients like unlearn that whole behavior. Um, so yeah, I mean, so inefficient too. Even if beyond like the injury concerns, it just like makes you inefficient. And what really winds me up is like seeing people just be inefficient in general with their time in the gym. Like,
Yeah, again, I think it's just in some ways you're almost better off going in with less information and doing whatever you
mm,
do with your breath than you are doing this weird thing that was taught to you.
yeah,
So,
that's the
I don't
bottom
know.
line. And then what was the third thing? I forgot already.
I think, oh, yeah, it was moving outside of ideal alignment is not going to result in injury.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. Man. Yeah, another thing I would put on the list as well. I'd like to grind some gears with clamshells in general.
You mean the be all end all of glute med exercises with no transference to standing?
Yeah. Yeah, that one. That whole, oh my gosh. Yeah, it ends up again like back to like relying on my biomechanics, like how I apply it with muscle activation techniques every day. I think it's more of a QL exercise than a glute medius exercise.
I mean, the way most people execute it, yes.
Yeah.
And for all the clamshell, enthusiasts out there, look, if you want to do a clamshell, you can clamshell your little heart out. Like if you can get into the right position and feel the right area, so you sort of are like, okay, this is where this muscle is, and then you can stand up and load it now that you have sort of some kind of mapping of it. Great. Like again, when applied in the right context, it may have some value. But to think that that alone is going to support someone in controlling, how forces transmit through their knee joint when they run or they walk or they squat, unlikely, because it's in a completely different orientation to gravity. And I mean, like what you said, it for most people, because we don't have good mapping or good movement patterning, again, not going to hurt you, but it does turn into sort of a glorified QL exercise, which again, fine to use your QL, but if that's not your target muscle, maybe you're not going to get the outcome you were looking for.
Yeah. I love that concept of mapping and teaching that to people. And, if they're ready for it. Not everybody is. I mean, mapping to me is it's a loose way of saying it. And I hesitate to say this, the things that you move together, kind of wire together, is one way to, if we had to give it like a 10-second, if I had to give a 10-second explanation of what it is, but I love explaining that to people. I think it's like super useful information. Especially if you're in that cycle of trying to exercise with consistency without like an unreasonable amount of pain or discomfort, like that it's a really cool concept to learn. Do you have anything to say about that, or you want to shift over to that alignment?
I mean, let's dig into the alignment thing, because that's the one that,
Yeah.
without fail, I'm sure by the time I open my phone at the end of this conversation, there's going to be some white dude with a NASM cert that he got last week who's going to tell me that I'm wrong, which is fine. But again, it's just It's so much more complicated than that, but it's also so wildly impractical because life doesn't happen in ideal alignment. Like we're sitting here and neither you nor I are sitting perfectly aligned, stacked in a chair. Like I've got one leg crossed and kicked out to the side. I'm kind of slumped. It's like, and I know why it happens. It happens because the people who hear that don't understand loading principles and they don't understand, like, usually when something happens, it happens because like we're unprepared or surprised and we're not able to react quickly, right? That's often how an injury may happen. Or it happens because we just repetitively just keep pounding the crap out of our joints in a position that we're not well prepared for. Right? Like if I do a bunch of push-ups and my wrist extension sucks, yeah, my wrist might feel kind of crappy, especially if I don't have control or if that's the only exercise I do, right? Repetitive movement. And it's like when you consider those things, I think that the idea of ideal alignment become like, it's a model and it's a helpful model to look at if you're going to be like, wow, you're really specialized in these ways and you're really unskilled in these ways. So let's fill in some of these blanks where you're unskilled and see if you feel better. I wouldn't necessarily tell someone they were unskilled, but my brain is kind of like, okay, we're good at that. We're not so good at this other movement. But this idea that if your knee goes in, it's past your toes, it's going to explode is ludicrous. Like, how are you going to get up the stairs? How are you going to get through life? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. The ideal alignment. And sometimes that comes up in my sessions with people and I almost like just go skip. Like, I don't even like cross, like it's so not helpful to just think that we have to be in this like north, south, east, west world. Cause that's, again, it's like, that's not how we exist. It just doesn't, like, okay, let's talk about these principles of like, all the motion available to us.
Yeah. And alignment is individual.
Yeah.
And asymmetry is normal. And I think that that's really important for people to realize. We're not symmetrical and we're not going to live in ideal alignment. And ideal alignment is a made up model.
Yeah.
It's not real.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think I would put some blame on like chiropractors for this one.
Yeah.
And even so now when you say the word chiropractor, there's many different types and approaches. I totally understand that. But there's also only 2 schools in existence. And we have to realize that like the generation of people that are outside of that box is so small, and I haven't given much thought to chiropractors in a while. But yeah, I would think that they'd be at fault for repeating that one over and over and over again. And the knees over toes thing, I don't know where that started. That really gets on my nerves too. And then there's one in the strength and conditioning world about like quad to hamstring ratio.
Oh,
and it's like, bro, like
night.
your quads have to be strong. They're like the anti-gravity muscles. Like, of course they're going to be stronger. Like they're so like the rectus femoris is so strong. I'm very impressed. Whoever's listening out there in anatomy kingdom, but
well, it's all gobbledygook pseudoscience that's not grounded in anything, right? It all can sound really smart, but it just doesn't translate very well to real life, and it doesn't hold up. Anything that can be said in a soundbite or that fits on an Instagram card or in a reel, for the most part, unless it's like drink water and eat vegetables, usually is probably kind of wrong. And sometimes it might be kind of wrong in a helpful, overly simplified way. But when it comes down to, it's basically like one of those like beware of dog signs for fitness. Like, you know what beware of X. Yeah, right. If you can slap it on a bumper sticker, it's probably not something you need to take to heart.
Yeah. Alignment bad. Knees over toes bad. Yeah. I agree. I totally agree with that. Oh my gosh. So we just have a few minutes left. So any of my clients listening, sorry if that sounds like I'm dismissive during our sessions, but I'm just trying to get work done and I really don't have time to go into how wrong, perfect perfect alignment is. So there's that. Anything else we missed? I think the last few minutes, I'd like to just comment on Brittany and, I think there's a big reflection about what's going on in this conversation about fitness and unveiling some of like the fundamental problems and what the I don't know, the conversation around free Britney is and purity culture. I think these are intertwined. What would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's you want to talk about reflections. Like I remember, I was born in 85, right? So like Britney Spears is like part of my upbringing, like in a lot of
Oh,
people.
for
She was
sure.
very
Yeah.
popular,
I was
right?
born in 82.
Yeah. So we all kind of grew up around that time where it was like normal to like normalized to ask someone like Britney Spears or Jessica Simpson, so are you a virgin? Have you kissed someone? Have you done that? Right. And it was weird. It was like this thing where like women had to be like really sexy, but then they also had to be virginal. And you had these like old men record label people like controlling these women's lives. And that's what dictated our culture. And you want to talk about that performative aspect of how, being like, you need to be likable and pretty and good. You want to talk about how that translates into fitness, likable and pretty and good, and like following rules that don't make any sense, where behind the scenes, it's all a mess.
Yeah.
Right. Clean food, bad food. I mean, our culture is just broken. And I think fitness culture and pop media culture and purity culture, I think they're all one and the same. People often just use fitness as a way to replace religion and show their goodness. And it's really gross and disturbing.
To show their goodness. Yeah. Just feeding their ego of, look, I can, I am great.
And getting the reinforcement, right, from our culture. Like it's very much reinforced. So yeah, I think you can look at this whole free Britney movement and all the problematic things that happened. And it's like, yeah, it's all wrapped up and it all carries over to fitness.
Oh my gosh. Well, I definitely, I remember in high school, so I'm the same age as Brittany. Am I maybe a year older? Being triggered in high school by Baby Hit Me One More Time because, it was gross. And it was just like, it was triggering to me because like boys that I may have like thought were cool and like interesting were like, oh my God, Brittany, look at that out. Like, and like drooling over that innocence and that outfit. And I was like, oh my God, like that was triggering to me. I obviously was raised my mother very what is it? Outspoken, liberal, very like, strong-minded, get into the community, get your hands dirty kind of lady. Overdid it to in many aspects, like, covering up her own anxieties and whatnot with like all this volunteer work. But like, I saw that, I saw that starting to show itself, even back then as like a 17-year-old. And then, she represents like the whole timeline of like Madonna, like it's even like a Madonna, not Madonna like the pop star. I mean, like the Mary Magdalene, like that whole conversation about, being how disrupting it is for a woman to be herself, to culture in general. Like it represents all of that to me. So I think, so thank you for, just like, kind of entertaining the conversation that way, because, I think I just don't want, it's just like another one of those culture things. I just like don't want to see it get blown over and like at the same time, I just felt so defeated, like seeing Bill Cosby get out of jail, in the same week. And I'm
Like
like,
the
oh
same
God,
day,
yeah,
right?
was it? Yeah.
I think it
Ugh.
was literally the same day. Britney Spears finally has her moment, right? Speaks out, is like, I have no control or agency down to my birth control, which is appalling. And then they're like, let's free Bill Cosby. And now he's planning his next comedy tour special. And it's like, and I mean, you want to talk about parallels to the fitness industry. How many problematic, I'm sorry, y'all, I'm a feminist. How many problematic white dudes do we see who like sexually harass women in the fitness industry? And they continue to have a platform of hundreds of thousands of followers. And it's like, and because they're being propped up by all of their friends who are also famous on the internet, it's like we never see any change. We never see a shift, and we continue to create this exclusive situation where, to circle back to the original beginning of our conversation, women feel like they have to perform. They feel like the space isn't for them, and we end up mistaking the modality, because the kettlebell or the barbell is neutral, with the culture, which is toxic.
Yeah. Yes. Second that the barbell culture, I'll just say that barbell bro culture it's toxic. But there is a little bit of a parallel to it where, the barbell can also be equalizing, in a way as well. And I think that conversation in particular will continue through the Olympics, which will probably air, which will start. I think this will air like probably a week after that does. So, oh my God, so many conversations to be had. Thank you so much.
Thank you for bringing me on and talking about all my favorite things to rant about.
Check. Yeah. So tell people where you are and how to say hello and anything that you would like to promote.
Sure. So I would say if your preferred way to engage with me is through listening, I have a podcast called Results Not Typical, and you can find Jennifer on it. So go check out that episode. That one's already aired. My Instagram and my website are both at Naab-Levy, which is impossible to spell. So just find it in the show notes. And then I have a YouTube channel that I'm going to be filming a lot of tutorials on. So if you're curious about strength and movement and troubleshooting sort of all the weird little pain things that happen during all these exercises in Pilates and strength land, feel free to check that out. And I have an email list, so I write things sometimes, so you can engage with me over there.
Fabulous. Fabulous.
Thank you guys so much for listening. I had a ton of fun talking to Nikki about those various safety cues that are not helpful. There are many solutions to finding better cues. One of them is working with a professional, of course, and then the other one is to learn about how your body works, and through that process, I think you'll find a lot of the regular fitness idioms and sayings don't really make sense. That's my favorite alternative anyways. So if you'd like to engage with myself, I'm over on Instagram at Jennifer_Simone_Schwartz, where I share a lot of what I'm doing, for my self-care and exercise. But I do have a course that goes through how to be your own exercise guru, and that's what it's called, Be Your Own Exercise Guru. That class right now is on waitlist. We have not opened it up for the fall, but we are doing so very soon. So head on over to the show notes or my Instagram to get on the waitlist. At thinkfitbefitpodcast.com, you can support the show by purchasing from our affiliates, which are high-performance nutrition companies that I use myself, and signing up for the newsletter so that you stay connected into what we're doing and the stuff that we are sharing on a week-to-week basis. For example, we go live about once a week on how to use the information that's in this podcast platform, because some of it is complicated and very much rooted in science. That means we have to constantly revisit things and question how we interpret them and work with that information and revisit it as a forever student, really. And that's one of the beautiful things about exercise. And thinking fit is really about that mindset of digging into the details, keep learning, and keep improving. Again, thank you guys so much for listening, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts on this episode. And I hope you LOL'd with us, and if you would be so kind, let us know how much you enjoyed it or what you're learning on iTunes with a review. That would be amazing. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will talk to you soon.